Great, okay, terrific. I think I'll just stand up so I can see everybody. And standing up is actually what it's all about, that we all are doing right now. And it's great to be here on the campus because students really are at the center of the storm right now. And students, I think, are also leading the stand up, and the shout out and the refusal to just sit here and allow your future to be stolen the way that it's being stolen. So it's been really exciting to be a part of this campaign and to really go around to all the hot spots around the country. And nowhere is the energy higher and greater and more visionary and more empowered and determined than what we're seeing on the campuses, including here in Washington State. So it's really a pleasure and an honor to be here, and thank you so much, Richard Anderson Conley, for arranging tonight's visit. And it feels like we are in this incredible historic moment, as Richard was saying, that we're kind of at this tipping point moment, and we could kind of tip in either direction. We've kind of got this convergence right now of incredible threats to our future, to democracy, to justice, to our civil liberties, to our economy, to wages, to our homes and our public higher education and K through 12. Everything really is kind of under threat and in the process of unraveling right now. Yet at the same time, we have this incredible uprising, this surge of democracy and justice that's taking place at the grassroots. From the democracy revolutions in the Middle East to the Occupy protests around the country, to the Keystone pipeline blockades, the coal train blockades, the Chicago Teachers Union strike standing up for public education for all communities and all students, the eviction blockades that are keeping homeowners in their homes and preventing the banks from throwing them out, and especially the student strikes to roll back tuition hikes. And in Quebec, not only did they succeed in rolling back those hikes, they're actually going on now to push for free public higher education, which is what we deserve in this country as well. And while we're at it, thanks so much to Occupy for really launching the call to put an end to student debt. It's outrageous that the banks are being bailed out now for the fourth time. The Fed announced just 2 weeks ago, $40 billion a month is being spent to bail out the banks once again for these fraudulent mortgages that they created. This was something that they created, they can own it. Let's let the banks fail. If they cannot pay their debt, let's let them own that and let them fail, and instead let's bail out the students. That's what we ought to be doing now. So this movement, you know, it's like this tug of war going on right now, because we are at this brinksmanship kind of moment where we could topple over the edge with the next crash of our economy, with this descent into fascism, with the attack on our civil liberties, with the meltdown of the climate and so on. There are just so many ways we could tip over the edge. But at the same time, there is this unprecedented surge of energy and activism and vision in so many areas at the grassroots level. And as democracy is breaking out, we're also seeing people breaking away from the establishment parties, the political parties, the corporate political parties that got us into this mess to start with. So we have this situation where we are in an election now, and the eyes of the country and even the eyes of the world are on this dialogue right now. And we have the potential to make this election a really powerful tipping point, to take back our democracy and the peaceful, just, green future we deserve. And the exciting thing is that people are realizing we've come to this point now, not just because of one party, and there's wide understanding that the Republicans are totally in the pocket, But now people are beginning to wake up to see that the Democrats are also in the pocket, and that over a period of decades, we've basically been accelerating in the wrong direction under both political parties. And this is a very liberating moment that people are actually realizing this. In fact, to the degree that in this election, about 1 out of every 2 eligible voters is actually staying home, voting with their feet to say that neither Barack Obama nor Mitt Romney is representing them. So what we're doing is bringing the voice of that social movement into this election, because we deserve a voice and a choice that's not bought and paid for by Wall Street, and we deserve it right now. So, people will say, well, we got to vote Democratic in this election. And so what we're trying to do in many ways, it's like being a political therapist, for people who are stuck in an abusive relationship. In this case, an abusive political relationship. You kind of have to march them through and do the reality check to show, that it's not getting better, even under a Democratic White House that had, for the first 2 years, both houses of Congress. So I'm going to just quickly march you through the facts on the ground, because for some people that will help wake them up. And it's not the people in this room, but it's the people that you'll be talking to who didn't come here tonight that need to be woken up. So in fact, you find that if you look actually at the walk and not the talk, we hear very nice warm and fuzzy talk right now, especially from the Democrats. But remember, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. In this case, it's fool me for 4 years. So let's look at that record. So, in just about every key area of economic, social, international policy, climate policy, really in every area, you have Barack Obama basically embracing the policies of George Bush and then going even farther in the direction that has been just dreadful and dangerous and harmful for all of us. On the Wall Street bailouts, $700 billion under Bush, but $4.5 trillion in dollars dispersed under Barack Obama, and another $16 trillion in zero-interest loans. Wouldn't it be nice if some of those loans were extended, zero interest, to the people in this room? But they were not. They were given to Wall Street. Much worse under Obama than George Bush. On the offshoring of our jobs and the undermining of wages in this country, because the wealth has gone to the top. And in fact, where we are right now, here's a really compelling image of where we are. Think of 100 people in the room, and there are 100 loaves of bread. Think of how those loaves of bread are actually distributed. 40 of those loaves of bread, and this represents wealth, 40 of those loaves of bread belong to one person who's pretty overnourished to start with. So that one person has 40 loaves. The poorest and worst nourished 50 people in the room, half the people in the room, have one loaf to share among them. This is not an economy that's working for us. This is not an economy that can function at all. We're a consumer-driven economy. When people don't have security and discretionary cash to spend, the economy basically goes into gridlock, and that's where it is right now. And that's where we have progressed under the economy of the Democrats as well as under the Republicans. And these free trade agreements that were created by Bill Clinton, signed by Clinton with the NAFTA, the North Atlantic Free Trade Agreement, and then expanded under Barack Obama to include 3 more, and another one that he's negotiating now in secret, this Trans-Pacific Partnership, which is NAFTA on steroids. This is what we've gotten under Democrats as well as Republicans. Obama's first moves when he won the election, even before he was inaugurated, was to bring in Larry Summers, the Treasury Secretary under Clinton, who had engineered the Wall Street crash. This is who Obama brought in. It was clear from the get-go this was not going to be fixed. It was, they were going to stay the course, and then bringing in the other, usual suspects, including Timothy Geithner, who had overseen waste, fraud, and abuse on Wall Street, and Jeffrey Immelt, who was is still the head of GE, was brought in to head the President's Jobs Council. But Jeffrey Immelt in GE had laid off more workers, closed more factories, and offshored more jobs than any other person in this country. It speaks volumes about what the priorities of the Obama administration were from the start. There were no Republicans in the room to blame that on. This was done by the president. Even during his honeymoon period, he had all the power of the mandate of his election. It was clear that he was accountable to his corporate sponsors, not to the everyday people to whom he had given a lot of lip service. I should mention briefly skyrocketing student debt. Romney and Obama have the same positions on student debt. They pride themselves on staying the course. They were going to be heroes by preventing the interest rates from getting even worse, from going higher. But to stay the course on a sinking ship is not acceptable. It's not enough, and it's another way in which Obama has allowed a problem that was present under Bush, but it skyrocketed under the Democrats. They didn't fix it. They didn't fix the housing foreclosure crisis. Had $300 billion appropriated by Congress to buy up the mortgages and negotiate to keep homeowners in their homes. They refused. Obama said too much moral hazard, as if families who were targeted by predatory loans, largely families of color, elders, and so on, who were unfairly targeted, to call them, moral hazard is just ridiculous. It's the Wall Street that is the moral hazard, and they should be thrown out of the White House where they were welcomed in by the Obama administration. And just very quickly to name a couple others, this was not the peace president. The troops came home from Iraq because it was George Bush's date of withdrawal. It speaks volumes about the Obama administration that it took George Bush to actually bring the troops home from Iraq. Obama fought to actually extend that date of immunity for U.S. soldiers, so our Army might still be in Iraq right now had Obama had his way. He expanded the war, began to bomb the heck out of Pakistan on day 3. Pakistanis now identify the U.S., not Taliban, not Al-Qaeda, as their chief enemy now. 75% of Pakistanis identify the U.S. because U.S. foreign policy has been based on brute military force and wars for oil. We're going to change that. A green White House or a greenhouse would put international law and human rights and diplomacy at the front of our foreign policy, not wars for oil and brute military force. These attacks on our civil liberties began under Bush, actually begun before that too, but got bad under Bush, and then Obama actually codified the violations of George Bush, and then went even further, claiming the powers to indefinitely detain us at his pleasure, basically, with no public process, no due process at all, to undermine our basic liberties and freedom, the right to a trial and the presumption of innocence. All that has basically been thrown out the window by Obama, who's now given not only himself but all future presidents that right to basically toss out our civil liberties and our presumption of innocence and right to a trial, as well as claiming the right to assassinate anyone, including U.S. citizens. So looking at civil liberties, looking at immigrant rights, more people deported under Obama, racially profiled, deported, families divided, kids taken away from their homes, more under the first 3 years of the Obama administration than all 8 years under Barack Obama. We need to make immigrant rights, human rights, than under George Bush. Yes, more in 3 years of Obama than under 8 years of Bush. Thank you. It's late in the day right now. So we need to make immigrant rights human rights and create a welcoming path to citizenship for all of the immigrants who are essential members of our community and our economies. And also under Obama, we've seen the war on drugs expand, the massive, wasteful, racist war on drugs. We should be legalizing marijuana because it is a substance which is dangerous because it's illegal. It's not illegal on account of being dangerous. So we can legalize it. A president on her first day could actually instruct the Drug Enforcement Agency to do something very, very radical, and that would be to use science, to actually use science in determining which substances would be listed and restricted as scheduled substances. Because if science was used, then marijuana and hemp would be off the list from the get-go, because there is no scientific reason to have them there. So I'm almost out of time, and I just want to say, the bottom line here is that the politics of fear, which has been telling us and telling you right now that you don't dare stand up for yourself, that is basically a public relations campaign, because the politics of fear actually delivered everything we were afraid of. All those reasons we were told not to stand up, all those reasons we were told not to vote for the things that we deserve and the things that are within our reach right now. We got all of those things by the droves because we were silenced. And in fact, if you go back to the Nader race, it wasn't Nader who stole the election. It was the Supreme Court that stole the election. And in fact, if you look at the exit polls, Nader didn't take. Nader received votes from equal numbers of Democrats and Republicans, but the vast majority of his votes actually came from independent voters who had voted for Ross Perot previously and who would not have come out to vote had they not had someone to vote for. So it's just not true that Nader stole any election. The Supreme Court stole the election. That is a propaganda campaign intended to scare us and intended to silence us, because they know, the political predators out there know, that we actually have truth on our side, justice on our side. We actually have the solutions. We're calling for a Green New Deal, not more tax breaks for the wealthy or for corporations. That does not create jobs. We can directly create jobs right now, end unemployment, put everyone back to work at the same time that we put an end to the climate crisis. We call this the Green New Deal, and it is a way to end both of those problems at the same time that we make wars for oil obsolete. That plus guaranteeing a right to health care through Medicare for All, which not only covers everyone, puts you back in charge of your health care decisions, not some CEO for an insurance company, but lets you make those decisions, and a well-kept secret, it also saves us trillions of dollars over the next decade. So instead of austerity, and finally it's time to downsize the military back to year 2000 levels. It's been doubled. We now have this bloated, wasteful military budget. By doubling it, we are not twice as secure. If anything, we are less secure, as you can see from all this blowback going on around the Middle East right now. The fact that we're not turning over the war effort to Afghanistan because we are being shot at by Afghani soldiers. We can't even do the training that our troops are supposed to be doing to turn that war effort over. So the real way to international security is through peace, international law, and human rights, and diplomacy. And the way to national security is by bringing those troops and our war dollars home, cut the $1 trillion military budget, that's $1 trillion every year, bring those war dollars home, that's hundreds of billions of dollars that we can be using right here to strengthen our security economically, our security by stopping the climate crisis right now. That's how we get really secure. And we're going to replace the politics of fear with the politics of courage. That's what has always led social movements forward. That was responsible for working with the abolition of slavery. You had a social movement on the ground, which was hard fought, as well as independent political parties, namely the Liberty Party, which drove that solution into the broader public dialogue. Same thing with women's right to vote and women's suffrage. It was a hard and bloody battle fought in the streets, as well as an independent political party, the Women's Party, that brought that agenda into the broader political dialogue. Same thing with the labor movement. You had the movement in the streets for the 40-hour work week, for the right to form unions, for safe workplaces and more, in addition to independent political parties, the labor, the socialist, the progressive, and other parties that could actually bring that demand into the broader public dialogue. As Frederick Douglass said, power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did and it never will. Independent political parties like Socialist Alternative and the Green Party bring that demand into the political space. Without it, we will continue to move backwards, but with it, we will move forward as a social movement and a political movement working together. We are unstoppable. It is the politics of courage that they are quaking in their boots about. All they have is the disinformation campaign that they are waging against us and the politics of fear. All they can do is conduct psychological warfare to try to talk us out of our votes. Because on issue after issue, for every one of these policies, this is what the American people are actually clamoring for by large majorities in poll after poll. So we do have the numbers, we do have the solutions, we do have the momentum, and it's especially the momentum in the younger generation that brought us the revolutions, not only in Tahrir Square and Tunisia, but the civil rights movement, and throughout our history, the environmental movement. It has always been the power of young people who see what their future is all about and who decide to stand up and not take it anymore and take back our democracy. If word gets out, there are 36 million students who are indentured servants now, carrying student debt and facing an unemployment rate of 50%. If word gets out and goes viral on the internet, we could have 36 million people show up at the polls, and we could turn this election on its head. 90 million people are expected to vote. If we had 36 million students voting for themselves, voting green in this election, we could turn this election on its head and actually turn the White House into a greenhouse in this election. But even short of that, if we don't win the office, we can win the day by driving these solutions forward and by launching a political movement and a political party for the long haul that will turn this breaking point into a tipping point. Whether it's this year or next year or the year after, we are here to stay. Thank you for being a part of this movement. Together we are unstoppable. Thank you.